When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rewind Raw. The year is winding down, but here we are, enjoying the renaissance of the 2-hour Raw era. That there's still not been one Monday that I have taken this for granted.
Well, enjoy it. We got how many more of these? Two? Two more of them left?
Yeah, well, for us, yes, because we are not going to be doing a show the final Monday of the year. I think that's December 30th, roughly. Mm-hmm. So, yes, two more for us this year. And then we come back January 6th, and then the world goes to hell.
Then we make up for all of that time we saved by adding more and more and more and more and more for all of eternity.
Yeah, you know, some people take this version of me to be angry and complaining. Folks, get ready, okay? Just get ready for January. I don't care how great the in-ring product is. I don't care what's going on. When we're starting this show at 11:05, the day they decide to just go 3.5 hours, 4 hours, they're trying to kill me. They are trying. They may succeed in 2025. I can't promise that I will make it through this Netflix era.
It's not so much the Monday at 11:05 John Pollock that I'm looking forward to. It's the Fridays at 11:05 John Pollock.
Oh, that John Pollock has almost passed away at this point, folks. Like, listen, Everyone has their limits, and Friday nights really do push them for me. But we have lots to talk about on tonight's show. We have a bunch of news, a really busy weekend. This weekend kind of just crept up on everybody. There were all these different events going on. I'll tell you what the killer was. It was 7 hours of UFC on Saturday when I then made the gargantuan task of trying to catch up with as much as I could. I managed to see Deadline. I watched the World Tag League final. I even watched the All Japan, the tournament matches on Sunday. And, you had Collision in there at GalaxyCon. Just a lot of wrestling and a lot of MMA this weekend.
Well, what stood out to you the most?
Bryce Mitchell's philosophy towards seatbelts. He's anti-seatbelt.
I have no idea.
Okay, well,
I
would encourage everyone to wear seatbelts. He does not believe in seatbelts, that the government should not be able to tell you to strap yourself in. Because what if you need to maneuver out of your car?
I have no idea who you're talking about, so I'll take your word for it. That sounds pretty ridiculous, but okay.
Brandon from New Jersey will explain it to you. But no, there was a... Well, let's start off with a Deadline. Did you get to catch most or all of the show on Saturday?
I did catch Deadline. Well, the one show I did watch. Yeah.
What did you think about the two Iron Survivor challenges in year 3 that they have tried out this concept?
I thought they were both excellent matches. Yeah. I think conceptually, it's easy enough to follow. Listen, if you can follow a War Games, if you could follow Elimination Chamber, I don't think a concept like this is hard at all, difficult at all to follow. But more so than I think the concept, it's the booking of it, and I think the quality of performers that really makes it. And this year, especially, I thought both of the matches were outstanding, especially the women's, which I thought was the match of the night.
I thought that I really like this match concept. I just think that it has been a winner for NXT. I don't find it overkill to do 2 of them on one show. I also don't find it to be at all a drag, even though you know how long it's going. You know that it's going to go right until the end. But I think they structure these things in such a way where you get like entertaining 5-minute periods, and the way that they set it up with the penalty box and that final, their booking of like the final minute has always been a strength of these matches. So you had the surprise return of Obafemi taking the spot of Eddie Thorpe. So Obafemi wins the men's version to set up his match with Trick Williams. And then on the women's side, Julia prevailing as she will now challenge Roxanne Perez, which they announced for New Year's Evil, which will take place in Los Angeles at a venue to be determined. They just said Los Angeles. But yeah, two of the strong elements of the show that I think NXT has really cultivated this concept. But I really thought the MVP of this show was Nathan Frazier. I thought that he was in the men's match, busted his nose open, and then came back for this incredible tag match, teaming with Axiom to retain against Tavion Heights and Miles Bourne. And while Axiom and Frazier were terrific in this match, a lot of spotlight on Tavion Heights, deservedly so. I thought that this was his first chance to have a big pay-per-view length match, and I thought that he really shined, and I'm very intrigued to see 2025 for him, where this guy is going to be in a year, because I think he showed so much in this match that we got to see a bit of it in the N1 this year and him kind of breaking out of his shell, but this was, I think, his first time in NXT. You got to see what this guy could mature into, because he really hung well in this match. And a year from now, like, he would be a perfect addition to like Chad Gable's group, but this guy should be in NXT for like 18 months, and where this guy will be could be a very high ceiling for him. I thought coming out of this.
I was impressed really with the entire team, I think working that sort of like, collegiate wrestling style, there's room for that type of person to grow in NXT, whereas I think on the main roster, you kind of already have that. But I was very impressed with the No Quarter Catch crew. I thought that they would actually execute the title change. I kind of wanted to see it myself, because I don't know if you could have built a bigger crescendo than you possibly could have, but it was wonderful storytelling in that match. Basically, with Axiom having to account for Nathan Frazier's injuries. So they did such a great job of telling that story.
And how did you think about Ridge Holland, his performance in the title match with Trick Williams? It went second from the top, with the women going on last.
I thought it was fine. Yeah, I mean, I saw on Cage Match a lot of people be very critical of it. I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought they told like a good story, and by the end of it, it was kind of about as expected. Maybe not like such a hot challenger that I think you would have expected a title change, but I thought it was like a perfectly fine, entertaining match.
Was it worth? Was it enough killing Chase U to build up Ridge Holland for this title match?
I feel like Chase U probably had a bit of a shelf life anyway, and probably needed to die. So why not? Sure. How did you feel about them teasing the belly to belly suplex on the floor?
Yeah, it's kind of
the whole story of the match is Trick Williams has an injured neck, and
they did the belly to belly tease on the floor, which I certainly caught it. It's not as though they made a huge issue about it on commentary, but I think everyone knew what they were. You had
the commentator say, "Oh, that I feel like I've seen something to that effect, like a familiar something."
There was an allusion to it. I mean, obviously, if they feel that's going to get him that level of heat, then I guess you go with something that people perceive as real, and that is certainly you're leaning on a real life event, and I don't think they would be doing something unless Big E was totally cool with it. And like, that was Ridge Holland's whole character coming into NXT, was the fact that he was considered reckless, and that like they played off of all of that. So you've sort of already introduced that. So I didn't have a huge issue with it, but I'm sure some people are going to be, it's very well could be turning out to be like a career-ending move, but like that is kind of wrestling, is you take that stuff. I mean, maybe a bad comparison, but like when Chris Benoit became the Crippler, it was like throwing Sabu up into the air and the guy came down on his head and he ran with a nickname.
I don't think that's a bad. Well, the subject you're talking about, yeah, but the fact that they turned that into a nickname for him, I don't think is exactly what I think this is. Yeah, at this point, it's not so much a question of like whether or not it's effective. It's a question of does it make people uncomfortable when they're watching something that's supposed to be fictitious? Does it make them uncomfortable to the point where they just get turned off by the product? And everybody kind of has those limits. But I mean, I will say throughout this entire run, they've really made Ridge Holland a much more interesting character than he was prior. And I think like the performer himself has like, he's done well, you know, he's seemingly worked hard and gotten better at like being a character. Yeah. What do you see? What do you see for Ridge Holland's future?
I think he was always going to be in NXT as sort of get him, like he was kind of going in circles on the main roster. And it's been very interesting to see where he has gone in NXT and where Pete Dunne has gone, conversely, on the main roster. And I always thought Ridge Holland, like, this is not going to be a permanent landing spot for him. This was like, you know, you're going to the minor leagues to find your character, and then as soon as they deem him ready, he'll be brought up again. Like, I would not even be surprised if we see him back on the main roster in no time flat. Like, you've lost to Trick Williams. You've sort of done that big job at the end. You know, he could hang around for a little bit, but yeah, I do expect him on the main roster as soon as they're ready to reintroduce him.
It's very interesting, especially with the modern New Day storyline going on, and teases of, I think now more than ever, an expectation of Big E coming back in some capacity. You know, what that represents for a Ridge Holland. Yeah.
Well, that was the Deadline show. I thought an entertaining show overall. We're going to move
the last PLE on the WWE Network here in outside of the U.S.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, this is the last one on the WWE Network until the Netflix move. So, what a historical significance this Deadline show will hold. A trivia note for international viewers. AEW put tickets on sale to the public today for All In Texas, and this was accompanied by a event at Globe Life Field today, hosted by Tony Schiavone and Conrad Thompson, without Eric Bischoff. He did not accompany Conrad Thompson for this event, but Conrad was there to announce that with the All In Texas show next July, it will coincide with the return of StarCast, which they have not done in several years, and was never a AEW event per se, but largely, I mean, working kind of hand to glove with those. So that will be coming back next July. And they just had a procession of performers coming out and quickly speaking to the fans that were there in attendance, including a Big Boom AJ, who gave us the big update that he will be out of his walking boot in about 2 weeks, and he'll be at the Hammerstein shows, so you can look out for that. Bryan Danielson came out, and he was also interviewed by Denise Salcedo, who was there, and is trying to avoid surgery. He says that's his last resort. He's trying other methods, and he categorized it as 50-50 if he will wrestle again, but certainly is keeping the door open. He's hopeful. I mean, he didn't even dismiss the idea that when talking about wrestling at this show in July, he's like, I don't know what my status will be, but I'll definitely be in attendance for this show. He obviously wants to get back into the ring. Steve Borden, Sting, absolutely not. This guy comes out. They're chanting one more match. Guy couldn't have shut it down quicker. He made it so clear. There will not be any more matches for Sting. He's done, and good for him. He is predicting Darby Allin will win the title next year. That is, if Darby returns, because he is off to climb Mount Everest in April. And I'm not being crass here, because Darby himself joked about dying climbing this mountain, and even Sting, I think, felt a little uneasy about him jinxing things. So that's what he's got coming up in April.
It's a very real risk. And again, all this talk of, like, you know, Darby being one of the sort of focal characters in this, what is it, Death Rider storyline. Whenever we get to that title match between Darby and Mox, I just don't really know if a title change is to be expected with him having this ahead of him.
Would you allow Darby Allin to go climb Mount Everest if you are Tony Khan?
I wouldn't. I mean, as a friend of Darby Allin's, I don't think I would allow him to if I had any care. But do I have any jurisdiction? Like, would I be able to tell? Would anybody in that man's life be able to tell him not to do something? I don't think so. I
mean, it is like Tony Khan is going to bend over backwards for people to do projects. That's part of the charm of AEW, is the fact that you know, they will allow you to do all of these outside projects. We will also talk about another story today.
This is a project. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not exactly going. You know, I'm doing a cameo on a film.
This isn't Happy Gilmore, but
yep, he is. Yeah. But he is off to do that. And so we don't have a ticket number yet for All In Texas. Tony Khan was on the Battleground podcast, and his wording is that they have already sold over $1 million worth of tickets for All In, which, if that is true, based off these VIP packages that I understand have been priced very highly, that's insane if they already have $1 million advance for this show. Again, that's kind of the only clarity we have is from Tony Khan himself, and that was before the public on sale. So I'm sure WrestleTix will be monitoring this. It's a super important show. You could argue the most important show for AEW next year. It's their first stadium event in the U.S., and it's at a time where, yes, over and over we talk about the momentum of AEW, but this is a very big undertaking for the company in its current state. So a lot is going to be focused on this show in July.
Yeah, very much so. It's coming at a time when you can argue it might be the worst time to run a stadium show in the U.S. in their 5-year history. So we'll see how well they do. Australia was a bit of a strike and a miss, when it comes to trying to run a stadium event. I think they're going to put their best effort into this one, and they seem like they already are with this big press conference.
Well, not to be outdone, we also had Mark Shapiro speaking at the UBS Global Media and Communications Conference. I know, Wai, you are logging into this on Monday. This is actually going head-to-head with the AEW special from Texas. And some of the topics that he covered, very open to the idea of more 2-day premium live events in WWE after the expansion of WrestleMania and SummerSlam. This is a topic we have discussed, Wai, and I think it is only confirms what everyone has thought, that once you saw especially SummerSlam expand, the natural question is if they see opportunity, i.e. added revenue, they are going to pounce on that additional revenue. And splitting the Rumble or splitting up War Games, I think all of this stuff is on the table if it makes logical sense for them. And we also have to remember that you're riding a hot hand at the moment where I think you could do 2 nights of the Rumble or 2 nights of Survivor Series. That might not always be the case, but it is today.
It is today. Yeah, absolutely. You strike while the iron's hot. And I everything that they've attempted so far has worked. Like what have they failed on, with these sort of attempts at growth? Okay, like maybe we could point to like some NXT, like what is it, that St. Louis show, maybe having a downscale, but like for the most part, these
NXT isn't killing it on the road. But I would say for WWE, for like a big main roster event, you would have to go back to Vegas 2 years ago when they booked Allegiant Stadium and had to then go, I think it was to T-Mobile they went, but they moved to the arena. And that was one kind of they had to they overshot for that one. But at present, what would you have thought? Granted, it would be a differently booked card, but like this past week or last weekend Survivor Series, like is that an event, like the strength of it, like 2 War Games, or even if we look to January, February, splitting the Rumble, which might be the better test case. I mean, are they at a place where maybe you can't, like we're talking a stadium, but I think they could probably fill a 18,000 seat arena for 2 nights of Royal Rumble where you have a big title match and a Rumble on both nights.
So if they feel strong enough to do a 2-night SummerSlam, I feel like a Rumble would be even more likely to be successful, because the Rumble itself, both men and the women's, I think are like more interesting. Like they have direct narrative relevance to WrestleMania. They're just more like hyped up matches than I would say most things you get at a SummerSlam. So I actually think it stands a better chance at being a success than SummerSlam does. So the Rumble for sure. This past Survivor Series, they would have probably had to fill whatever show had the women's War Games with maybe a much more interesting undercard, like headlining match. Maybe that's where you do like a Cody match. Maybe you take Punk out of the War Games and put Punk versus Seth Rollins, for instance, on the undercard of that one. The women's War Games alone, just because the build to that one I thought was relatively weak and quick, probably not strong enough. But with the right sort of like goal ahead of time in wanting to sell both nights, I think they could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. He also spoke about Netflix, and Mark Shapiro, he's got like a very, very direct, he's got a very direct way of getting to the core of what his thoughts are. And he stated flat out, listen, we know January 6th is going to be massive. What I'm thinking about is June, July. How important are we going to be to Netflix when we're not the new shiny toy? And of course, he couches that with every indication is that it's fantastic. It's going to be a great relationship, but it's a very honest, I think, level of, you know, where this thing is in 6 to 8 months. I mean, from all signals, it's going to be a very big 2025 for WWE, and Netflix is a huge catalyst to continue that momentum. And a big question is going to be like the level of sponsors that they can attract. Like that's a big reason Netflix is getting involved here, is what advertising they can get on this side of things with live programming and looking into, you know, where is this thing 6 to 12 months into the relationship. It's
an interesting thought because when he speaks of how Netflix is going to treat us, you know, 6 months down the line, it makes me think about like essentially how much they're going to feature us, you know, on like a front page or in their promotional materials or just whatever promotional efforts that they have. And for me, I think it's unique to think about because I don't know if Netflix has anything comparable to what the WWE is about to be for them.
I'll tell you, they have one thing. I'm very curious if I finish Raw. Hey, you might also like this 6-part documentary series on Vince McMahon.
I mean, but even that, what I mean is a never-ending weekly episodic television series, you know, that airs multiple times a week. What gives Netflix series pushes is like when they have new seasons, for instance, or like when like, I don't know, just the newest thing drops. How often will they give WWE that sort of push on its front page? Obviously, you think about WrestleMania, you know, like just that alone. SummerSlam coming along is probably going to get a major push again for international audiences.
Yeah, that's for international. It's not for US. Yeah, so that's a big part of it.
But you know, like when you're just talking about a brand new episode every single week, you know, will it be in the top 10 every single week? Will they have a separate category for it? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I know you were super busy today, and we are going to go more into this Mark Shapiro interview on Pollock and Thurston later this week, but I thought for Wai's sake, we would put together some of the highlights of Mark Shapiro today in a quick, digestible form. So here was Mark Shapiro at the UBS conference.
Our conviction as it applies to the industrial logic of this merger has been affirmed. Record revenues, record EBITDA. We've raised guidance multiple times. We've got a strong balance sheet, significant free cash flow. There's still more we're going to get out of that and beat our guided net savings of $100 million, but also integration of the Endeavor assets, as you said, and of course our capital return program, which a dividend and a buyback will all be getting underway. Needs to remain a strong cash flow business, and companies are going to do what they can to build a moat around that cash flow business. But we will go wherever is best to, again, grow the brand, grow the audience, and cash in on the site fees. I would say the marketplace is frothy. It's very sticky. A lot happening, strong table set, and a bullish 25 in front of us.
I've never heard of the term frothy be used in any sort of commerce or marketing field, but all right, I love it. This guy. What a cut. What a super cut from John Pollock. What was that first thing? The first line he had? I mean, conviction. Our conviction as it applies to the industrial logic of this merger has been affirmed. There's a t-shirt.
Wow. It's consider that super cut a bonus, or as we like to call it here on Rewind to Raw, value accretive.
Lovely. What a character. Is he your favorite addition this year?
Yes. By leaps and bounds. Like, he is certainly above any of the other TKO executives, or really anyone at the executive level in pro wrestling. Mark Shapiro is number one for me at this juncture. Number one in the World Tag League was Tetsuya Naito and Hiromu Takahashi, who took the honors on Sunday, defeating Gabe Kidd and Sonata. And for those that are catching up on the tournament, it was throwing all these booking curveballs, because with Hanare injured and taken out of the last day's round robin matches, him and Great-O-Khan, who are the IWGP Tag Champions, had to forfeit their last match. It created a three-way tie based on the outcomes on the last day, with Naito and Hiromu winning the three-way tie and going to Sunday's final. They win, but rather than going for the tag titles, they are opting to face one another on January the 4th. And according to the match order New Japan has put out, this will be second from the top underneath Zack Sabre Jr. and Shota Umino. Meanwhile, Great-O-Khan will find a new partner and face the Young Bucks on January 5th to determine who will be the IWGP Tag Team Champions. So pretty serious if Hanare, had to miss the end of this tournament and is going to miss the Tokyo Dome shows as well. So, and remember, a number of years ago, Hanare tore his Achilles, which is Xavier Woods noted how big of a recovery that entails when he mentioned his comeback last week. So this guy's had some unfortunate injuries and never a good time. But this is really the big time of the year for New Japan.
Really sucks. The worst timing for something like that in a big match that was supposed to be Hanare's. So sucks for him. A really unique situation to come out of this World Tag League. So have they decided that they weren't going to cash in on this at all, or are they just delaying this? Like, they have no intention of being a tag team. Is that it? Following this tournament?
Well, it that really wasn't made clear if they will hold on. Like, they did win this thing, and personally, I think like Naito and Hiromu at some point going for the tag titles is definitely like a new beginning level of match you could do coming out of the singles match. But this is much stronger, I would say. And this January 4th show, not only have they added Naito versus Hiromu, but they are also now, Tanahashi is putting his career on the line before his farewell year. So if Evil beats him, he tells Evil, I will put my career on the line on January 4th, but you must face me in a lumberjack match. And this was considered, this was quite the negotiation by Tanahashi. So I don't know where ticket sales are at for this Tokyo Dome, but the fact that they are now all of a sudden putting Tanahashi's career on the line, that would tell me January 4th, plenty of good seats still available.
Yeah, and I don't know if that stipulation's doing much for me. You're already promoting the entire next year. I think you could have come up with something a little bit more believable.
I'd wrestle under a mask for my last year. I could wrestle under a gimmick of your choosing for my last year. Maybe that'd be more believable than this.
Man, I don't know if that would do it for me either.
You'd have to be my partner, good and evil.
Okay. Yeah. What's your temperature right now for New Japan coming?
So I watched this whole show, the World Tag League final. I will say, like, Zach and Shota Umino, they were involved in a 6-man tag on opposite sides, and I think the match is going to be very good. But man, does this not feel like the main event of the Tokyo Dome? And I understand that they are trying to create their next big star in Umino. I just don't know if they have really set up this as a opportunity for him to really ascend to that level. I think in hindsight, and I kind of felt it at the time, that it's all well and good to have your stars ready for the next generation. I don't think Shota Umino is there at this level. Now, maybe he's going to have a career performance and he's going to come out of this stronger, but I do think just for simply moving tickets, which is what the Tokyo Dome is about, and it's what New Japan's business is about, Naito and Zach would have been the stronger match for this, rather than rushing it for King of Pro Wrestling and then getting that Zach title defense back in London. I just think that was the stronger match. I don't believe for a second Naito couldn't have held up and done a 25-30 minute match, especially with Zach, of all people. They had a terrific match together back in October. They would have at the Tokyo Dome. And I just look at this one as one where I just, like, Shota Umino feels in that role of the guy that's challenging the big new champion, and you're the first major defense that you don't see Umino winning, and I just don't think Umino is going to be coming out of this where they may project him to be at the moment. But we're going to see. It's a major risk, I would say, on New Japan's part. Like, WWE can put a main event out there on a premium live event. They're not going to pay too many consequences for it. But this is very big for New Japan that these two dome shows perform well And I just don't know where the interest is for the January 4th show. I think more of the attention is on January 5th the next night.
Well, do you think we get any AEW crossover for the 4th, or are they strictly keeping that to the 5th?
I think this is pretty much the card that they've released. I think they'll add like the Rambo on the pre-show, but we're at like 8-9 matches deep. I don't think you're getting anything more on this January 4th show. Like, this is the card with Zack and Umino, Naito against Hiromu, David Finlay against Yota Tsuji for the global heavyweight title, Doki and Desperado for the junior heavyweight title, Shingo Takagi against Takeshita for the never openweight title, Tanahashi against Evil, now a lumberjack match, Ren Narita, Jeff Cobb, and Ryohei Oiwa for the television title, Mayu Iwatani against Azumi for the women's title, and then Kushida and Kevin Knight defending their junior heavyweight tag titles in a four-way with Robbie Eagles and Kosei Fujita, Catch 2-2, and Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. And yeah, and then the next night, it's Zack against Ricochet, which will either be for the IWGP title or it won't be, because Umino will face Claudio Castagnoli, so one of those will be a title match. David Finlay and Brody King and Yota Tsuji against Jack Perry. Again, one of those will be for the global heavyweight title based on the outcome. Kenny Omega and against Gabe Kidd. Great O'Connor and his partner against the Bucks. The women's four-way for the International Women's Cup, and then Tomohiro Ishii challenging either Takagi or Takeshita for the never openweight title. But this far out, I think like Kenny Omega's return feels like the biggest thing on either night to me.
Agreed. But, even this card is missing a lot of your New Japan, heavy, like top stars. So you have to expect more to be announced, don't you?
Well, I mean, for the second night, let's remember, like, CMLL is involved in this too. Like, this is a co-branded show, and we don't have any other than the women's representative. I would think you're going to get a few more CMLL representation on this show, but like, I'm not expecting any more, at least any more significant AEW names. Like, you've got Ricochet, Claudio, Brody King, Jack Perry, Omega, and the Bucks. Like, that kind of fills out the AEW portion, and all your big New Japan's, like, New Japan is pretty much throwing everything on the January 4th card, and then you have several names on the second night. I don't know. I think both nights are going to be very strong shows, but we're going to see like what the interest is for going to the Tokyo Dome. Like, I would say if you were running an arena the second night, or even just the Dome 2 nights, that's ambitious in the best of times.
Yeah. Hard to say without us, like the fourth show feels it's entirely catered towards a Japanese market, whereas I think the fifth is catered more for maybe your New Japan World viewer, to perhaps subscribe. Is that a card for a North American audience that's enticing enough for them to want to sign up for a subscription if you're a lapsed fan, And if you're signing up for one, obviously you get the other as well, right?
Well, we are going to talk a little bit about the Lucha Bros because they had quite the weekend. We had Penta, who is now off the roster page in AEW, so looks to be free and clear at this point, showing up at Triple A's taping on Saturday. And then over the weekend, we had Ray Phoenix responding to a fan that was inquiring about his disappearance. We have not seen Phoenix on AEW television since July, stating, "I will have my chance to speak the truth." And then added, "No one stays in a place where they receive inhumane treatment." And then later stated, "I needed a doctor and you ignored me for months." AEW has not commented on this. I don't think they are going to comment on anything as it relates to medical issues and whatnot. I don't think it's a great look for anyone involved here. And I think this is another situation where much like you saw that free Phoenix sign on television, I think it's only going to amplify that sentiment of people that are, wanting to see these performers like Ricky Starks or Ray Phoenix are not getting to see them. And that's not going to reflect on the promotion, even if they have their reasoning for not using these guys. But, I mean, Phoenix has a lot of time on his contract. Ricky Starks has a good amount of time left on his contract. So I do understand the sentiment from performers and from fans that it's like if you have these guys under deals, just feels as though they're not getting showcased. And there's probably a lot more to this story. I don't want to get into too much like speculation here, but this did, come out publicly over the weekend. And I just don't think these stories do anyone any good. The promotion, the performer, like no one. It's just, it's an unfortunate situation. And that's where Phoenix finds himself.
So if you're Ray Phoenix, what is your attempt you're suggesting this is his attempt at trying to get out of his contract using public pressure. Is that what you're saying?
I don't even know if that's necessarily his intent, but I think there's obvious frustration that he has. Like, here is a guy that, I mean, look at the schedule this guy has held up, and he's done like 2 matches outside of AEW over the past few months. And I mean, he's also been hit with all these injuries over the last year or so. This guy, I'm sure he wants to be wrestling. He wants to be working.
So is this not for him a net positive public play?
Oh, I don't think, I just think overall it's,
I just think it harms his image before other promoters. Is that,
I don't think it harms his image. I think that it is more so just one where I just think it's one where, for Phoenix, I don't think it's going to come off like too poorly for him. I just feel that, when you start this stuff, I think it really just leans into tons of speculation. There's going to be back and forth. And I just think you're no further ahead. If you're Phoenix, like, AEW is going to stick to its guns of whatever its plan is for Phoenix, but it's certainly, I totally understand like the level of frustration that you're just sitting, not being used. And
so, okay, all that said, I don't think having free Phoenix signs is bad at all for Rey Fenix. I think it would be excellent for Rey Fenix, to help him build, whatever hype that he could while being sat on the shelf. He's creating a narrative for himself so that whenever he gets picked up, whenever that contract ends, he's off to the races and people already know exactly what he's coming off of, right?
But does it in... Like, just looking at, like, let's look at this as pure strategy for him. He is not being utilized on television, and maybe you are going to have a bit of a groundswell among fans for your Ricky Starks, for your Rey Fenixes. But in this environment, are you somewhat, in lieu of that, you're also giving up any kind of leverage you might have? Because AEW is obviously not going to be an option for you once your deal is up.
It sounds like they didn't have that leverage anyway.
I mean, he could always opt to stay when his deal is up. Like, you're pretty much stating, like, if you are going to go and complain...
After these tweets, that's certainly...
Well, that's what I'm stating, is like, that's the game you're playing here, is that when your deal comes up...
Again, we don't know the reason why these guys are leaving. Obviously, with Phoenix and his brother's already gone. It doesn't sound like he's looking for that counteroffer anyway. With Starks, I mean, who knows? I guess what can happen at the end of this particular contract, but it doesn't even sound like it's their play.
Well, I think at the root of it, it's like there's a ton of frustration. And I guess if you're looking at it, like, from AEW's side, I think if you have this guy under contract for as like well into 2025, I don't know. This is one of the top performers in the industry. Like, I would be utilizing him. I mean, it wouldn't be my move to just...
How would you utilize him? I'm curious.
I mean, I would find a role for him on television.
Like, what would the role be? Because like I find it interesting just to kind of study responses, like, because I see merits to both ideas. I see merits to using him, jobbing him out, or like letting him wrestle and maybe even having great performances, but with the goal of building somebody. I also see the merit to shelving the person so that you're not letting them, build hype for on your screen when you could be using that airtime for other people.
I would argue the absence, his hype will be that much larger. Like, the second this guy shows up elsewhere, it's going to be massive, whether he's on TV every week or whether he's not. Like, just a guy jumping, it's going to be a big deal.
So you're saying it'll be big no matter what, whether or not you use it?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think keeping him off TV is going to harm his image or the fan desire to see him.
So why not keep him off TV and use that TV time for somebody else then?
Well, that's an argument. That's an argument they can use. If they believe... Like, listen, we talk a lot about why this person doesn't get screen time, why this person isn't getting, like, you could argue, like, our television time is limited. Are we going to dedicate it to somebody that we don't have confidence is sticking around? And that's probably at its core, their decision-making when it comes to various performers that they don't use. It's like, our TV is at a premium. We have such a big roster. Why are we going to invest this time when we don't think this person is around for the long haul? Like, that's just not a wise investment for us. It's different from the situation right now with a lot of the Bellator fighters where PFL has bought Bellator and they are not booking these guys for fights. But if they don't get booked, they don't get paid. Ricky Starks and Phoenix are getting paid. So it's not a case of like you are starving these people by just holding them under their contracts. They're being paid, but you also, these performers, they want to be out there. Like Phoenix is a 33-year-old, and with his style, like it's, he is not somebody that I think wants to be wasting away and just collecting a paycheck for X amount of months.
For me, I think I'd like to know what sort of PR hit AEW is taking, Tony Khan himself is taking by enforcing these sort of restrictions on talent or shelving talent, hoarding talent, and not using them. The way that I think WWE for years took a lot of PR, a lot of PR negativity because of doing something like that. It's fascinating to see that I think you're seeing equal support. Or at least you're seeing a lot of people speaking up and defending Tony for doing something like this as a business practice versus people that feel sympathy for the performer. And again, it's just maybe a bigger part of the bigger, AEW, anti-AEW discussion as well.
Also want to talk quickly about Dana White's response or lack thereof when he was asked about Conor McGregor over the weekend. This is when reporter Kevin Iole asked Dana White following Conor McGregor's civil trial that ended last month in Dublin.
We haven't had a chance to talk to you since the thing about Conor McGregor came down. Any reaction that you have since the conviction in the civil court and the penalties he faced?
What do you mean? What's my reaction?
Do you have any comment about what his...
If I had a comment, I would have put it out already.
What about his status with the UFC?
He hasn't been fighting here in I don't know how long.
But there's been, you announced him at 303. There's been talk he's going to fight.
Right.
I mean, does that impact him in any way? Or?
Well, if he does fight, it'll be sometime next year.
Conor doesn't even fight here. I mean, what's there to ask about Conor McGregor? What did you think about that response? Good response, bad response, or exactly what you would expect from Dana White?
I would say about exactly what I'd expect. Yeah. It was about as much of a no comment as I think you could get with the addition of we've had nothing to do with him.
Certainly wasn't a case of Brock's at home doing his thing. Brock's doing Brock things. We don't know. It was, he just said he'll fight next year. It was pretty matter of fact about it.
He said, what were his exact words? If he'll fight, it'll be sometime next year.
Yeah.
So if he fights, it'll be next year. What does that mean? How is he so sure that it'll be next year?
It's not going to be Conor refusing to fight. He has seemed pretty adamant about wanting to fight. And I think personally for Conor, and I think it would behoove him at this moment to get all of the discussion focused on a fight rather than all of this. I mean, he is apparently the word is out that he is even contemplating moving away from Ireland to the States. I mean, he has just taken such a beating PR wise after this civil trial in Ireland. And I don't think he has received anywhere close to that here in the US. Even the response to this from Dana White, you could imagine other instances where
did Kevin Iole get any blowback for asking the question?
I didn't see any. No, because it
was a fair question.
It was. If this took place in a professional wrestling setting, you probably would have been lit on fire by now. But that was the response. I took that as, hey, when it cools down, we'll book Conor to fight, and that will be the ultimate litmus test. Really, what this comes down to is how comfortable Disney is, and by extension ESPN, of promoting Conor McGregor.
You really think so, John? When have they stepped in the past?
When they were going to run during the pandemic, they did step in and stop the UFC from going to an unregulated portion of the country to run. That was one time. Okay. I don't think they will. I don't think that's a reasonable expectation to have. But I did not expect as much resistance in Ireland when it comes to all of these various sponsors and businesses that want nothing to do with Conor McGregor. But that's in Ireland, where this has been covered daily. It's a much bigger story over there. I don't think it's going to be the same over here. And I think within time, like what it would take would be sponsors not wanting to have their logos and business attached to TKO for a Conor McGregor fight, and I just don't think you're going to get that kind of resistance.
Do you feel the momentum on the story? Like, what is it increasing or is it decreasing on this side of the ocean?
Over here, I don't think it was ever at a big inflection point from the public in North America. I think people are more aware of it, but even during the trial, like I did not see much focus on it, but it's there, and you also are going to have your defenders of Conor McGregor as well. That he's very likely going to be appealing this as well, so that will be ammunition for his defenders and for those that want to say, hey, he's not in jail, it was a civil matter, and that's Conor's business, and he's a fighter, and we're going to promote him. I think that's probably the likely outcome here. All right, we've gone really long on news, so you can get all of the rest over at postwrestling.com. We have ratings news up. SmackDown did a good number on Friday. Rampage did not. Their lowest 18-49 number ever on their Friday night slot, which was, not great. And it was a loaded up Rampage with 3 Continental Classic matches. So all of that is up on the website, and we will now be shifting over. A quick reminder that the annual Christmas Jingle contest is underway over at forum.postwrestling.com. You have about 2 weeks to get your jingles into us. You can post them in the forum thread. It is saved right at the top of the forum where you can enter, or email them to Wai or myself at john@postwrestling.com or Wai@postwrestling.com. We will be playing all of your Christmas jingles on the annual Christmas show that gets released on Christmas Eve, and we will be awarding a winner. Who will be the Christmas Jingle Contest winner for 2024? Get your submissions in by Monday, December the 23rd.
Every year it could be the last time we do a Christmas Jingle contest. So let's see if you've ever thought about doing one, or if you have that perfect pro wrestling parody Christmas jingle in your minds. Now is the time to get your creativity out there. The deadline is December the 23rd.
All right, check out all of that and all of the shows for this week up at postwrestling.com. Thursday, we have a special Rewind Away covering Knock at the Cabin, starring Big Dave Bautista, a movie that I rented and watched over the weekend, and we'll share all of my thoughts with Wai this coming Thursday. The premise is that Dave Bautista has led a group to a mysterious cabin in the woods where they are set out to prevent the apocalypse. This movie's nuts, and I will talk about it more with Wai, and we will discuss, is this Dave Bautista's greatest role, and is this the best movie that Dave Bautista was ever involved in? Might not be the same answer, but we will discuss it on Thursday. An M. Night Shyamalan release.
I couldn't really find great consensus on the pronunciation.
The pronunciation?
We'll have to ask him, I think.
Well, maybe we'll get him on the show on Thursday.
Sure.
Okay, so that's all coming up this week. PostWrestlingCafe.com. I also did a bonus show today, 30 minutes, going through the World Tag League show and the All Japan Real World Tag League tournament as well. Both tournaments wrapped up on Sunday, so an extra 30 minutes on the cafe that you can hear my voice ad nauseum. On to Raw, finally. We get to the Intrust Bank Arena in Wichita, Kansas. 6,300 people, according to WrestleTix, and a shocking visual opening up the show. It is Gunther in jeans.
No suit jacket even? What was going on?
Hey, what's going to happen next? Are we going to see Randy Orton in khakis?
Did Jenny forget to pack this guy's suitcase this week or something?
It felt like this guy just got off the plane and his luggage was sent to Austria, because he came out in a sweater with jeans. I mean, he looked like, my dad.
He looked like a Gap ad. Not so much GQ. He's more American.
This looks
Apparel.
like waking up on Saturday morning and he's going out for a hike or something like that. I mean, him and Mark Davis maybe were exchanging.
No, not. Should we come up with the best and worst dressed list of?
I've actually been giving some thought to the awards. I have some suggestions. I want to change up the list a little bit, and best and worst dressed might be nominees, because worst dressed is in the bag for me, and I think everyone. But best dressed, we could have a discussion.
Okay,
I like that one. He is interrupted by Judgment Day, and Balor takes a swipe, noting that Gunther didn't give him a title shot, but you gave someone undeserving, like Dirty Dom, a shot. So just throwing a little wood on the fire there with Dom. Gunther notes how Balor didn't earn this shot, and he brings up Balor winning the Universal title 8 years ago, back at a time when Gunther looked up to Balor and respected him. But since then, you faded away while I have grown. Balor, you started cutting corners and hanging out with a bunch of weirdos in a clubhouse and playing second fiddle to Damian Priest. Now, from this ring, I literally and figuratively look down on you. Balor, you were the best in the world 8 years ago. For one night. I will be the greatest for eternity. And Judgment Day go to enter the ring when Priest runs down, attacking Judgment Day. We get a momentary team up of Gunther and Priest before Gunther just waffles Damian Priest, not just putting those bygones to the side. Gunther goes to powerbomb Priest through the desk, but is stopped with a sling blade. Gunther gets beaten down and hit with a coup de grace off the apron, and then they lay out Priest with 3 consecutive coup de graces from Finn Balor, a big segment to get Finn Balor over as a credible challenger as he hoists up the belt. And then we get the news from Adam Pearce in the next segment that it will now be a 3-way match with Damian Priest inserted to Saturday night's main event.
Interesting. Yeah, did not expect the change, and I wonder if this was a last-minute decision or if it was something that was always planned. I certainly think it makes the match perhaps have a higher chance of success because you have a very clear babyface in Damian Priest. We saw signs, we've been seeing signs of them like transitioning Gunther to this like tweener role, or it's sometimes even babyface role. Did they have hesitation about how well that would have worked in a match against Finn Balor in what might be, well, I guess this wouldn't be the main event, but I guess one of the main matches on the event.
All the matches are the main event on Saturday night.
But yeah, any thoughts on why, if this was a last minute change, or if you think this was something that they've always planned?
I mean, it made sense to add Damian Priest into it. I can't say it's like a positive or a negative, the addition to this. I was looking forward to Gunther and Balor just one-on-one, and I think it could have prolonged things a bit more, but obviously they had their reason for it. And I guess coming out of this, they are going to get to another Priest-Balor match at some point, given the finish at the Survivor Series and having these two involved. I think everyone sees Gunther retaining here, and then just who ends up taking the fall here.
Yeah. Otherwise, okay, but yeah, it makes the match a bit easier to pick and choose who to cheer for.
And Pierce also announced that next Monday, JD and Balor will make their quarterly title defense against the War Raiders, where the Judgment Day are banned from ringside.
In case you were any more sure who was going to escape that match with the World Championship, probably not the guy who's set to defend the tag team titles the next Monday.
Liv also asked Balor for advice for their match tonight. Her and Raquel have matches tonight. Finn was going to think about it and never got back to them.
Did you get all these like hiccups with the graphics on the show today? Did you notice?
When they were backstage?
Like at the start of the show when they were supposed to cut to like
yes.
the walk-ins and all that.
And it was frozen?
Yeah, and throughout
yes.
the entire show too. It was
I didn't notice it throughout the show. At the beginning, I definitely did because I heard Joe Tessitore seamlessly speaking, but the screen was frozen.
Yeah. I noticed several spots. I don't know if it was just like my particular feed or what, but yeah.
Unfortunately, my screen was in perfect condition for our synergistic moment with Colton Hevelo from Professional Bull Riders showing here in Wichita. I'm sure he's a huge deal in the PBR world.
I wonder if Mark Shapiro knows about him.
I've constructed a moat around my knowledge of PBR. You know, he threw out the notion that who's to say that you couldn't do one night of UFC, one night of WWE, and then one night of PBR. It's like, yeah, those seem like 3 great night out for any family.
Is it frothy enough is my question.
It's sticky. Karrion Kross, AOP, and The Miz against the Wyatt Sicks. So early on, Miz saves Kross from a Sister Abigail. We go to break, and then they come back. They've got the advantage on Joe Gacy. Miz takes what looked like an inverted F5 from Gacy. AOP starts double-teaming him. Loomis hits his crazy trust fall to the floor. And then Scarlett trips Uncle Howdy when Nikki Cross emerges from behind the desk and freaks out Scarlett, who runs away and gets tackled by Nikki off the steps. Miz then stops a Sister Abigail. The mandible claw gets applied to the Miz when all of a sudden, resurrected from the dead, Paul Ellering is back. I could not believe this. And he throws powder into the face of Miz and Uncle Howdy. And it ends with Uncle Howdy being led to the final prayer, which is the finisher for one Karrion Kross. He rarely wins, so I wouldn't expect too many people to be aware of that fact. And he pins Uncle Howdy. Uncle Howdy's first loss on WWE programming in, I guess, years at
Wasn't
this
this
point.
the Wyatt Sicks' first loss? Am I forgetting something?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, to my knowledge, at least like when it comes to these sort of group settings.
I mean, they've only had a handful of matches, but yeah, I believe they've... Yeah, but
And-
the
and
final
it-
Testament win.
And it was all because of Paul Ellering.
I could not believe he was back.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I
The
mean, we
fans
all-
demanded it. Free Ellering. I saw those signs everywhere.
Of course, yeah. He went on a tweet storm, a few weeks back, I'm sure. Yeah, no, we all thought like, okay, like this man is like, what, I don't know, 80 years old. He probably doesn't want to be on the road anymore. Like this was a way to write him off. No, this was just a way to build to the big angle of him coming back. Like, what did they call this powder? Some caustic substance is how Wade described it.
It's similar to the shit they poured down Orange Cassidy's throat. This is in
Sure.
Molecular form.
Got it. Okay. So he's back, and the Final Testament are stronger than ever. Okay, they've gained the Miz. Karrion Kross was proven right about the New Day, and they've got Paul Ellering back. This is becoming
Look at
the
this
most,
screen.
They're becoming the most dominant faction in the WWE. They're probably going to be facing the Bloodline War Games next
As
year.
I've said, I only care about seeing behind the scenes footage of these six traveling together on the road. And what those, like, they all have to travel in a minivan together. That would be the appeal here.
I'd love that reality show. Yeah.
Bo Dallas's first loss in WWE since 2019. This is also his second match since 2019.
Okay. I mean, listen, the Wyatt Sicks have kind of settled into their place on this roster. Like, we kind of see what they are now. They're like a very over mid-card act that makes sporadic appearances, and it's
totally fine.
It's been kept alive this entire time. Like many Bray Wyatt things tend to come in, they get overexposed, and we kind of get sick of them like rather quickly, even though we get really interested in them at the beginning. I think they're prolonging the longevity of this group by having them be very, very sporadic. But I'd be lying if I said like they didn't really seem as intimidating, by this point as maybe I thought that they would. Yeah. Any thoughts?
I'm fine. If they are a few notches above the Bushwhackers in terms of, an undercard act that you can introduce, it puts the Miz into something. I'm fine. I'm fine with this. Let the Final Testament and the Wyatt Sicks feud for another 6 months. I think we can do these like once every other month on Raw, and then get to a big blow off.
All right. As long as Paul Ellering's involved.
Well, now that he's back, I think he's going to be coming for revenge on Uncle Howdy. Jackie Redmond did a sit-down interview with CM Punk, and Jackie asks about the favor. Punk does not want to talk about the favor, and it's between me and Paul Heyman. He's not going to shy away from a fight in regards to Seth, but he's confused by Seth's hatred for him because I don't hate Seth. And he tells the story of a 16-year-old Seth Rollins, then Tyler Black, coming to him, and, well, I guess a Colby Lopez at this point, in 2002, coming to CM Punk to train with him, and Punk gets in the line for free, by the way. He wanted me to train him for free. What the hell? ROH Dojo here. Remembers when Seth was close to being fired, and I quote, shielded him from that. Seth is talented, but everything he's done, I've done better, and I did it before he got here. Seth filled a vacuum while I was gone, but the starter is back. The second stringer needs to sit back on the bench. This was just a great heel, smug CM Punk interview. I thought he was great here.
I wouldn't necessarily call it heel. It depends on who's your favorite, right? If you're if you love the Blackhawks, then
This was enticing you to see this man punched in the face type of promo. That's what it felt like to me.
It was the type that you wanted to see them fight at the very least. I thought it was a very good interview between these two. They seem to have like pretty good rapport with each other, Jackie and CM Punk, obviously through their bond with the NHL. I thought Punk came across he gave us a lot of context about the relationship between he and Seth Rollins that has never really been made public, at least on WWE television. We know that obviously history in ROH, everybody goes way back, to ROH, and these two
Next
are no
week,
different.
Jackie Redmond has a sit-down interview with Carrie Silken. The history between CM Punk and Seth Rollins.
You know what? Everybody's got history, right? And we also know. I like the way that he, I think, alluded to the Shield. We know the history of the Shield and how they were formed because of CM Punk's suggestion. But that's not really something that works in kayfabe because, to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever
not until they get the rights to the podcast.
Yeah, but
is that going to be his big line to Roman Reigns before they have their eventual match?
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure.
If I had my way, it would be Chris Hero leading the bloodline.
Oh yeah, because Roman wasn't supposed to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I thought Punk alluded to it nicely here, so that it made sense for those who are aware, and if you don't, it doesn't really interrupt the story at all. But yeah, it sounded very organic, and he fed in those they weren't so subtle jabs, but he did it in a way that was very, very nice.
He wanted me to train him for free. No one ever brings that up. He wasn't even going to pay me. Liv Morgan and Dakota Kai. So non-title match. I don't think they even announced this in advance. Pure Fusion Collective come out just to watch, and Kai hits the face wash, but she's focused on PFC, lands the scorpion kick, and then she's dealing with Zoe Stark. She kicks her and Baszler away, and then gets caught almost into oblivion, but counters it. Liv recovers with a code breaker, and then Liv leaps off the turnbuckle and is power bombed. Kai then kicks DeVille off the apron. The referee's totally cool with all of this, and then Kai misses a running kick that sets up oblivion, and Liv wins, and then PFC annihilate Kai, allowing Damage Control to run out as Sky hit a double drop kick, Sane hit a high cross to the floor, and then Liv returned out of nowhere, hitting Io with oblivion out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Pretty typical build to your PLE match, I guess, if you want to call a Saturday night's main event a PLE. Have the champion beat the associate of the challenger, and then just have all of them end up in a big brawl at the end here. I've been enjoying Kai a lot since she's come back. I think her in-ring has been a lot more faster, and it's been really exciting to watch, at least. So I'm glad she's getting more of these opportunities, even if it's on the losing end for most of them.
And she's in the second round already of the IC title tournament. And if Zoe Stark wins her three-way, that would set up Kai and Stark, which they're at least indicating there's going to be a Pure Fusion Collective Dakota Kai program. Then there was a video with Drew McIntyre calling Hell in a Cell the most violent of his career. He succumbed to massive blood loss. I don't know what that means. Succumb to massive blood loss. Would that have meant I died?
No, well, it means he passed out, or at least he lost.
Succumbed seems much more final than.
He's blaming the blood loss for his loss.
Well, he needed about a month and a half for the blood to return, and in time he also returned to Scotland because his family needed him. And he reflected on how he was screwed over this year, but then started to question his gut. What if I was wrong, and what if everyone else was right? But then he logged on to watch the Survivor Series on a stream, seeing Roman Reigns and Punk side by side with Sammy, Jay, and Jimmy. And he notes at least CM Punk took a bribe, but the others sold out for nothing. And therefore he set his sights on Sami Zayn and Jey Uso. I can't change the past, but I will change the future. So, I mean, this War Games match, they're going to get plenty of story coming out of this War Games where everyone's pissed that you would associate with Roman Reigns.
Isn't that what one of these sort of big posse matches should do? Whether it be the traditional Survivor Series or something like this, it's supposed to build to your next things. And I mean, that's again what is so great about the Bloodline. Whether or not you are broken up with the Bloodline, if you choose to reunite with the Bloodline, you're just creating this sort of whole effect of just repercussions, and Drew McIntyre is always the first to react to something involving the bloodline. We're kind of going back to the hits here with like him versus Jey Uso, but Drew versus Sammy isn't necessarily a threat that we've explored that deeply before, and him calling, like finding fault in Sammy for going back to Roman, is good enough for me. You know, it's where Drew is at his best, where he feels like he's in the right and he's fighting some form of either injustice or stupidity that he perceives, and I'm looking forward to these two, especially on the microphone.
They recap the New Day segment from last week, and Cody Rhodes is seen leaving Adam Pearce's office as the transfer window is wide open, and he walks into the New Day and notes how long he's known these two, especially Xavier Woods, since they went to high school together.
Or they competed against each other like in rival high schools.
Were they in rival schools or okay? They were. Yeah. That's right. They wrestled not the same school, but knew each other in high school. And Cody states, "You should be ashamed of yourselves." And Woods just blows him off, and they follow Woods. It's like, shit, that's really rich coming from Cody. You should have seen this guy in high school. So that would lead us later to the New Day segment. But first,
so obviously this is here to promote the transfer window, the possibility of Cody coming to Raw. Do you think?
Well, Mark Shapiro gave that out. He's going to be on the January 6th Raw. So there's your transfer window.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't even just a special appearance announcement. That's just like he's going to be there every week.
Well, I mean, he was there tonight, and he's going to be there January 6th. I think this guy has a key to whatever arena. I think he's pretty more than welcome. I don't think he needs a window to go back and forth.
But I also wonder if this was meant to tease anything bigger down the line, you know, between either of the members or both of the members of the New Day and Cody, possibly with a Big E or with anybody else.
Cody and Xavier Woods is a perfectly good television.
There's a lot of history there. Yeah.
He warmed up with an Olympic wrestler to get ready for his high school rival.
What? Chad Gable? You mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Chad Gable was his warm-up.
Past week. You're right. Yeah. Apparently Woods beat Cody back then.
Well, even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finish the story.
Seth is out, and he calls CM Punk a politician who put on a masterclass in how to spin the truth. And Punk has been doing that his entire life. He's a fraud and a con man. He said, "I did go to him to be trained because he once was the best in the world. I looked up to and idolized CM Punk. He even helped me get into WWE. We were friends." And then it changed. He left this company. And what is the surefire way to kick off a several-year-long feud in WWE? Don't respond to phone calls and don't reply to text messages. All avenues that Seth explored in 2014, and he reveals, "I was ghosted." I'm sorry. I don't care if he's the ultimate babyface. I have no sympathy for a man. I was ghosted.
Do you realize what matters to people these days? Okay, and what really gets people upset? It's ghosting texts. It's friendship bracelets, John. All right, that's how modern storytelling, modern combat storytelling.
You just wait, Paul Heyman. He's not going to forget about that phone and the lack of a call in 4 months by Roman. He said, CM Punk believed that if you didn't quit your dream job or had your thoughts in alignment with CM Punk, you were considered evil. And for the next 10 years, CM Punk tried to tear this company down. And he finally came back here when he failed at everything else, burnt every bridge, and the money was right. And the crowd to this starts chanting CM Punk and he said, "I used to chant his name too. I looked up to him, but then I realized he was a fraud. And I wanted to do better than Punk. And everything Punk did, I've done twice. And I did something he never did. I headlined WrestleMania." And that was his message towards CM Punk.
Mm-hmm. I thought Rollins was outstanding. He's become so great at sounding real and passionate. And this is the guy who, still occasionally does the ha ha ha. But when he's on, and he's almost always on when it comes to, like, especially when it comes to CM Punk, you could tell there's real passion behind his words. And I don't doubt that a lot of his promo tonight was probably based in a lot of reality, and he's kind of stuck to that this entire time as sort of like the franchise champion at the time, somebody who's like, the sort of Iron Man who's there every single week. I'm sure he felt a personal slight every time he heard CM Punk say something about his company in the public, and he's using it now as part of the story and his motivation for why he will never forgive CM Punk. Basically, he's calling Punk a hypocrite, somebody who's only come back because he's burned all his other bridges. He's here for money because the company's doing well right now. That's all really believable for us. We kind of all assumed that was the reason why he hated him anyway. So he's just kind of verbalizing it. And I'm curious to know how Punk will answer for it. Has Punk, like, I guess, like, he sort of like answered for it, but I feel like they've been somewhat unsatisfying answers. So what is the CM Punk going to say when confronted with the accusation that you're only here for the paycheck?
I'm one Bill Phil. I mean, that's the cost of doing business with me. It is something, though, like with Sami Zayn attached here too. Like, as you're diving more and more into all of this, like the way they have to kind of tap dance around like Colt Cabana, which is like, to me, like for those that are like aware, like it's such a like part of all of this as well. But obviously, they're not going to introduce that into the story.
What do you mean? Like, how do they have to tap dance around it?
I mean, I think it's just such a part of it would be great fuel for a Seth Rollins if he could just introduce all of that, like people that your best friend that you ended up suing, like that's it's
he could allude to it the way Punk alluded.
Well, I'm curious to see if they even allude to it.
But they don't need to.
They don't need to. They don't need to, and there's not really a payoff to doing so.
It's just good heat, I guess, for people who know. It's also interesting how he further confirms, I think, the WrestleMania main eventing being the elusive goal of CM Punk's. It's the end of Punk's journey, which was established in the Colt Cabana podcast as well. But by continuing to tease Punk about never having main evented to WrestleMania, we all want to see him do it that much more.
Zayn comes out, and Rollins warns him, if you're here to defend Punk, then we're going to fight. Zayn says, it was wrong of me to assume that you attacked Jay. We've been friends for 20 years, Sammy. Our kids play together. And yet, I was the first person you suspected attacked Jay. Why was that? And Zayn explains, well, this isn't you. You were out of your mind last week. You sounded more like Drew McIntyre. Rollins then says, I am not Drew McIntyre. And Zayn will agree. Yeah, you're not Drew McIntyre. But this stuff with Punk brings out the worst in you. Zayn admits, I'm going to stay away from this issue. You have business to take care of with Punk. We're all good. And Rollins agrees. So Sammy then gets into his addressing of Drew. He says, this is not going to go on for weeks and months. We're going to end this immediately. And I'm facing you at Saturday night's main event. So we have now a 5th match for Saturday.
Yeah. 2-hour window? Like,
yes,
how long?
A 2-hour window, which, I mean, I'm looking at this lineup and like, it feels like this 2 hours, it's pretty much going to be like bell-to-bell action for these 2 hours. I think a real miss is not doing one of those big talking segments WWE, like that is what is the big attraction on so many of these shows. If you were to tell me Punk and Rollins were going to meet face-to-face on Saturday night's main event, I would not be shocked if that would have been the highest quarter on NBC this Saturday. I really feel that is missing from Saturday's show. And I mean, they could squeeze in some like quick interview stuff, but to not promote a big talking segment, I do think that's a miss that the audience, they love these segments. I have no doubt that this Rollins and Zayn, I'm sure it's going to do really well. I bet the New Day segment later is going to do really well. Like that is the stuff that seems to be catching with WWE audiences at the moment.
Especially
more so than just matches for 2 hours.
Yeah. For a 2-hour show, that does surprise me that they've got 5 matches, because usually they've fit 5 matches into a 3-hour plus window sometimes.
And there's not going to be any overrun on NBC.
I guess it's always possible that one of these matches can go really short or be thrown out. for some reason, so that we have one less match. But interesting strategy to go with a lot more in-ring action instead of like all of those sort of bells and whistles.
Zelina Vega, Ivy Nile, and Lyra Valkyria in our triple threat in the women's Intercontinental title tournament. Lyra is trying her best to learn from Jey Uso and introduce this new arm-waving motion as she comes out, I guess like she's a bird. She tried this for her entrance, and then when we came back from break and she was about to leap to the floor, she did it again. Didn't exactly take over all of Wichita with this new motion, but it was a start.
Yeet took a while to get over as well too, John. Okay, so she just needs a catchy shirt, maybe some nice sunglasses.
Well, I thought that this match was a bit of a struggle. Nile applied a Fujiwara and gets rolled up by Lyra, and then Vega does a somersault dive onto both. And at one point, they were doing like the double bridge spot that seemed to be a bit off here.
It was a lot of like contrived sort of like shimmying to get.
They had to get into position for Vega to do it, and it was very contrived. I would say that. Then Vega goes for the sliding sunset bomb to Nile on the floor. Nile hits a double German holding onto Lyra, and then it's Vega with the code red, and Lyra makes the save, and Vega is sent out of the ring, leaving Nile to take the Nightwing, and Lyra got the win. I think this would have been a lot smoother in just a single setting, but it just felt very awkward. I just did not think this one clicked, and it seemed evident too with the crowd. They seemed kind of just really not attached to any of the personalities in the match.
Like many of these first round triple threat matches for these for either shows, mid card title tournaments, they've kind of received that sort of reaction, and I don't know what else they could have expected. Like most of this mid card does not get the airtime to have any sort of like
no promos about why this is important, what this title is going to establish, why like. Hey, Lyra Valkyria, you've come up from NXT, this title, what this means for the women's division, that now we have this championship. Like, it's a tournament, and it's you have two tournaments going on at the same time. I just think it's one that it's, I don't know. It just, I would have paced out introducing these two belts instead of like over top of one another, where I just don't think you're getting either belt feel so prestigious over the other because they're both coming at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I think part of the problem is the fact that we're in a 2-hour Raw phase right now, where I think having 3 hours theoretically would have really benefited somebody like a Lyra or like an Ivy Nile or somebody, just to be able to have a bit more airtime to kind of flesh out some of those backstories. But I think like seeing the reception to maybe a match like this versus the incredible reception to the women on NXT Deadline tells you the difference in I think writing and airtime that's given to the women on either roster. Like what I came out of Deadline mainly with is the idea that I continue to feel like there's going to be a big women's revolution, evolution, whatever you want to term it, John, but like a big advancement potentially, in the quality of the women's wrestling on the main roster once this class in NXT moves up. And I also ask myself, is the problem the talent, or is it the fact that they just don't give enough airtime to the women unless you're at the very, very top on the main roster? Like you take somebody even as talented as a Sol Ruka, you bring her up.
She looked great in that.
Amazing.
That
if
match.
You don't give her any airtime, like she's not going to like insert her into a triple threat like this. I mean, that talent's not going to matter at all. So there's going to have to be some like big sort of philosophical change about how much that they cannot afford. Hopefully this mid card title affords that.
You want to see this division allow the Lyra Valkyrias to really spread their wings.
Yes.
The best scene of the entire night. Rhea Ripley is getting ready for her match when Damian Priest walks in. Eradicate.
Are they? They're still the Terror Twins.
Yeah. Yeah. She has got her marching orders. Kathy Kelly tries to interview the New Day backstage, and Kathy Kelly words it about how they publicly berated Big E, and they take issue with this biased question, and they swipe the camera from Stu. And then we get a very unique entrance into the arena where Xavier Woods is shooting Kofi. Joe Tessitore. Woods has camera 6. That's Woods with Stu's camera. Now, They do a lot of these where the camera follows the talent in. They did a change of this with Woods. I also thought this was a really clever way for them to come out without music and not have the need for it. They shouldn't be coming out to their old theme, and maybe they don't even have a new theme prepared yet. But I thought it was a clever way around that, where no one would have noticed this, as opposed to them walking out here to silence. So they come out and. I mean, they don't even have to talk, and you already know the success of last week's segment, because this crowd, like the crowd in Wichita, they were fine. They were really kind of checked out for that women's three-way we just talked about, but my God, did they save all their energy up for these two. They are booing them incessantly. Like, this is not quite the peak Dom level, but it wasn't too far off. Like, they could not have asked for a better reception. And going into this segment, I wouldn't have considered it a slam dunk that a crowd was going to so vociferously boo the New Day, even after last week's segment. Like, I would have thought, like, it's a risk. We might go out there, and this segment, as we have laid out, it may not play to what we're hoping it will be. It's based on the crowd, and they just keep trying to talk. The crowd is booing them down. Kingston is stating, after 10 years of positivity, this is how you're responding after one day? And the crowd is chanting for Big E. Kofi defends, saying, hey, we could have taken a chair to his back. We could have taken a sledgehammer to his neck. And they continue to chant for Big E. And finally, they just give up and leave the ring. They were excellent. This crowd was great. And I thought this really validated last week's segment. Like, in a bubble, last week was a tremendous segment, but it really was the heat necessary to get this New Day heel act off on the right foot. And this was, I couldn't imagine you'd be more satisfied than if you were Kofi and Xavier Woods after this segment, and how the crowd, and you'll get crowds now, they're going to follow suit with this. I think this will be the case in all the cities. They now know how they're supposed to react. And I thought this turned out great.
Yeah, I thought this was a good follow-up. You know, this was essentially there to train future audiences, to give them the Dominic Mysterio, Don Callis effect, and it prolongs also the anticipation for their explanation, which I think is fine. They could tease us with that a little bit longer. I was somewhat maybe hesitant to with this direction last week, because in the end, I wondered if I was going to be that much more interested in seeing the New Day stay a tag team, because what are they going to do, win the tag team titles again? What I saw tonight gave me hope that they can still be together, but transcend the tag team division in some ways, and that was primarily through their association with Cody Rhodes. I'm really hoping that that wasn't just, like two ships passing by and you never kind of see them interact again. I think there's a lot of possibility with the New Day at this level of like heat, potentially like being strong enough to do something with Cody Rhodes in a tag team situation or a single setting with either of them.
Is there any potential of, because remember when Kevin Owens constantly talked about turning on people? Everyone deserved it except for Kofi Kingston. I mean, he would always put the except Kofi Kingston, and you do have this Kevin Owens match on Saturday. It's a possibility that you could have
that Kevin Owens joins the New Day.
That you could have at least some like subtle affiliation between them. I think it's really early for that. I would like to see Kofi and Xavier just kind of do their own thing, because they're pretty hot right now. I don't think you need to be adding things, but they did dangle this here, and you do have that program going on. And
you have Big E somewhere. At this point, I am really expecting him to come in to at least help us tell some story in whatever capacity, whether as a wrestler or as a manager for somebody else. There's a lot of potential there. So yeah, this was a good first.
I thought the segment was great. I really enjoyed it. And they ended off the show with the Anything Goes match between Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez. So we got weapons introduced after the commercial break, after they brawled through the crowd. Rhea delivered her version of a Van Daminator. And then as the crowd is chanting for tables, Rhea tries to drop Raquel onto the seat of a chair. Did not go smoothly. And she tries a riptide onto a pile of chairs, and it's averted when Liv Morgan runs down and gets thrown into the ring. Raquel boots Rhea and slams her on the chairs. Then a Tejana Bomb gets stopped, as does a Riptide, and Liv leaps onto the back of Rhea. And Rhea manages to fight her off, super kicks Raquel, and then gets caught by Oblivion when Io makes her second run-in of the night, springboarding with a drop kick into Liv and hitting a suicide dive. The table is set up by Raquel, and after Rhea stops another attempt at the Tejana Bomb, she puts Raquel through the table with a Riptide and wins. Afterwards, Rhea and Io did their very awkward tug of war with the championship, neither being the champion, and ending things with this face-off.
Yes.
This reminded me of that Brock Roman tug of war going into that Mania.
Oh, did it? I thought it was a physical, fast-paced match. One of the spots, unfortunately, didn't turn out so well with the chair, but overall, I think the entertaining match, with two powerhouses who clearly have a good amount of trust with each other around all of these weapons. I thought, didn't Ripley's arm get really bashed up too, like a big, like you?
I didn't catch that. Perhaps, yeah. She is kind of favoring it there.
But I find Ripley such a captivating lead performer. I've been really enjoying her run as a babyface. In ring, she's already so really powerful, so smooth. But with the audience's reactions behind her, I think it's making everything she does look that much better. Otherwise, pretty typical, build towards your pay-per-view by the end here with the closing segment. For some focus on Io versus Liv, while still putting our focus on the long-term story between Rhea and Liv. So as far as this title match goes, Finn Balor, I think none of us expect title changes whatsoever. They both feel like pretty lame duck challengers. But maybe that's the level you can kind of expect for a Saturday night's main event versus a Survivor Series.
I really hope that they do. You don't have to do a title change, but I do think you should do a really big angle on this show to set up something for January 6th. I would want to establish on this show that this is an important show. This is something you should tune in. Big things will happen on Saturday night's main event. Again, it's fine to have 5 great wrestling matches, but I think you want to, that's why I think having if you had a big bloodline segment to build, something where coming out of it's a big kind of buzz that you have after the show of something that is announced, and you do have to build up that January 6th show. So we will see what they do with the 2 hours, but the updated card does have Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens, Liv Morgan against Io Sky, Gunther, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest, Sami Zayn against Drew McIntyre, and the finals of the Women's United States Championship Tournament with the semifinals on Friday.
Yeah, strictly speaking about, I think the build towards the PLE so far, I think they've done a good job of making it feel like it's a relevant show, similar to the level of a regular PLE that you'd get on Peacock. They've given a lot of airtime to creating a lot of the stories for these matches so that they don't feel like they're just matches thrown together at the last second. Whether or not there's a title change, maybe none of us are really expecting, but there's at least, for the most part, enough story, especially in the part of Kevin Owens versus Cody Rhodes, that feels like this is an earned, relevant, show that you're about to watch.
What is your thought on Jesse Ventura being on the call for the entire 2 hours as opposed to doing an interview segment or just one match? That's pretty ambitious. I think for 2 hours, you're going to get a sense. I'm sure it's going to be a 3-man booth. I don't think they're going to put that much on him, but it's really going to be evident how up he is on all of what's going on, and he hasn't called a match in 14 years.
I think they'll make the job easy for him. Have him sort of provide that nostalgic voice, have him show his face. Maybe, I don't know, do a few whatever his catchphrases were. But I don't think he'll be doing too much heavy lifting. I'm sure they will coach him on whatever storylines that he has to know ahead of this, but beyond that, I don't expect him to. I don't think you're going to get Art Donovan these days.
No, but it's and
it's Jesse. He's not going to be, but he's not going to be expected, I think, to do that much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say for some, that's probably as big of an attraction to this broadcast as anything, is hearing Jesse on the show.
I want to know what the presentation's going to look like. How much will they play with nostalgia? Will the set look any different?
I think for sure they'll start off with the promos off the top as Obsession plays. They're obviously they're already using the song. So, I think there'll be a healthy amount of nostalgia in there, but I don't imagine it to be overwhelming like old school Raw, for instance.
Right.
Anyway, that's coming up Saturday. We're going to be doing a show on Friday after SmackDown on the Cafe, and then we will be doing Saturday night, but it's going to be a later show on Saturday due to commitments that I have on my end. So that will be coming out, but later on Saturday.
Jake asked, is Hogan going to be in it? You have a prediction?
Probably not. I think you would promote that. I don't think it would be a case of like they don't want to use Hogan. I just don't think he would show up for no reason, just to be a guy in the crowd or just there. So I would say no, I don't think so. I think they would promote a Hogan return to television, and yeah.
Well, I would only be hesitant because he's so attached to this lightning rod of a political, election race, right? But maybe these days it's not much of a concern.
I don't think that's any kind of issue. I think if anything, it would be just the awkwardness of like a Jesse Hogan segment that I think they are probably not going to do. And I don't see them putting Hogan on call. I don't think they have any reservations about using Hogan politically for any of the controversies with Hogan. I don't think they have any of those. Maybe that is a card you play the next time when you're doing Saturday night's main event and putting Hogan on NBC after all these years. Yeah, they could go that way. All right. Well, we are going to sign off. But we
got one piece of feedback.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
We got Annie from the forum who says, mixed episode of Raw. After last week's highs, I didn't enjoy the show nearly as much. A lot of the colder acts got more screen time than I liked. I liked the addition of Priest to the three-way. Gunther stacking Priest and Balor a la Reigns at Mania 37 would be a good way for him to overcome his crisis of confidence. I don't think they'll do that to Priest.
No.
I don't see that happening. Love the New Day segment and Punk's sit-down interview. However, I didn't particularly care for Seth Freakin's long promo. I feel like forcing Punk back into this outsider role after a year where Punk's been carrying himself as the company mascot is an awkward fit. I'm also not eager for Punk to do another feud centered around a backstage beef from a previous life. The Drew feud was the best of this variety, and I'd like to see him do something with Gunther where he has to reckon with his own mortality. Interesting. Well, I mean, I think Punk versus Gunther is something that is a very real possibility down the line. But I also think, I don't think Seth versus Punk feels like a retread of Drew versus Punk because I think they have different relationships and Seth is a very different promo, and also, maybe counter to like what I was saying earlier, I think you're supposed to feel like Seth is in the wrong here, just the same way we felt Drew was in the wrong, because we're supposed to feel that Punk has redeemed himself somehow, and that he's not necessarily just here for money. He's here because he's a changed person, because people change, and he's we shouldn't completely just base him on the words that he said like 10, 11 years ago. I'm kind of curious to see this story explored a bit more, and I'm curious to see if by the end of this, if Seth stays a babyface, how he changes his mind, how he learns that, okay, I was wrong, and CM Punk is a different person now.
Yeah, I mean, they're picking up where they left off, where the feud was going to go, and I mean, they have never deviated from kind of Seth having this hatred for CM Punk. Like he shouldn't have a different opinion of him after this past year. The fan base might, but that changes the fan dynamic, not the characters.
The Drew feud never really addressed that. Like never address what Seth was bringing up this week, which is your sort of hypocrisy in coming back to a company that you disparaged for so many years. Like the Drew feud was over just the personal hatred the two had for each other and the constant warring that they had over like teasing each other's personal friendship bracelets and the dog and AJ and all that. Didn't really do much to address the notion that Punk is here purely for money or because he has nowhere else to go. I'm hoping that this Seth feud addresses that.
All right. Well, we will sign off. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We have a whole slate of shows coming up this week. Pollock and Thurston Wednesday at 1 Eastern, and then Wai and I Wednesday night with Rewind to Dynamite. and then Knock at the Cabin coming up on Thursday on Rewind Away. So check out all of that. PostWrestlingCafe.com is where you can jump on board. $6 a month gives you a 30-day window to check out all that we do on a weekly basis. It gives you ad-free editions of this show and Rewind to Dynamite, as well as access to Rewind to SmackDown, Collision Course, all the Rewind Aways, and much more. A big edition of Talk last week as Way and I poured our souls out for all of you to listen to as well.
Thanks to everybody for the feedback on that one. Yeah.
And this month, we have got 2 editions of Rewind Away. After Knock at the Cabin, we'll do one more this month with Noah's Departure event from 2004 at the Tokyo Dome with Kenta Kobashi against Jun Akiyama, plus reviews of ROH's Final Battle. That will be coming out, and the big one at the end of the month on the Cafe exclusively, the best and worst of 2024, as Braden and Davey of Poison Rana join myself and Way, where we will discuss who was the best dressed of 2024, as well as some other awards that we will give out. $6 a month, postwrestlingcafe.com. Check out all of that great stuff in your support of the website.
Also, I wanted to give special thanks to all the Double and Espresso patrons that are out there. We don't really mention it here, but those of you who watch our live streams will see a credit roll at the end of every one of our streams. That's to just specifically shout out the people who choose to pledge to us at those higher amounts. So thank you to all of you guys. Enjoy the credit roll if you're watching on video. Otherwise, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.